Hey everyone, how's it going? I have a tag for you today for Tag Tuesday, and the tag that I want to do now is one that was created very recently by SHAWN the Book Maniac. The tag is called the Mookse and the Gripes Bucket List Book Tag. It is apparently based on an episode of a podcast that SHAWN highly recommends, and he asks that people who do the tag leave some information about the podcast and such in the description. So I will go ahead and do that, so you can look there if you want to know more about that. But the tag itself basically is a tag about bucket list books, so books that you want to read at some point before you shuffle off your mortal coil, as SHAWN puts it, but that maybe haven't been books that you've made a huge priority, or that you're still not making a huge priority. So SHAWN asks that you name 10 books that are like bucket list books and just chat a little bit about them. And so I have drawn up a list. I don't have too much formal to say about each one. A lot of them will probably speak for themselves, because some of them are really sort of basic choices in this regard. They're books that almost every hipster has on their bucket list at some point or other. But I will talk a little bit about each one, just a little. So I'll go in no particular order. The first one I have here is Finnegans Wake by James Joyce, which is probably second only to Ulysses by James Joyce in terms of the number of bucket lists that it probably shows up on, because so many people want to read Ulysses but haven't read it. And I actually have read Ulysses, and I rather liked it. And I actually think I might like Finnegans Wake even more than Ulysses, because it's even more just about the beauty of the language and linguistic ingenuity and linguistic games. It's written in kind of a, I don't think it's invented exactly, I don't think it's written in exactly what you'd call an invented dialect or language, but Joyce invented a lot of new words for it, and so a lot of it feels like a different language or a different dialect, and that's the primary difficulty. And so it is an intimidating work. I think when I do read it, it'll probably take a few months, but it's something I definitely want to read at least once, even if I never read it a second time. So that's the first entry. The second entry is an author who also shows up in SHAWN's rendition of this tag. And the book, it's a different book though, and the book is Joseph and His Brothers by Thomas Mann. I could have very easily also put the same exact book that SHAWN puts in his video, The Magic Mountain, which I think I will love The Magic Mountain, but again, I just haven't made it much of a priority. But Joseph and His Brothers has been a bit more of a white whale for me, I guess, because it's a retelling of basically the Book of Genesis, or a chunk of the Book of Genesis, in the form of this, 1,400-page novel by Thomas Mann, of all authors. And I saw a review video that got me really intrigued in it, as sort of a retelling of this foundational myth. And it's, like I said, 1,400 pages long. It's Thomas Mann, so it's not fast, quick reading, and I think that's the primary thing holding me back. But I've actually owned a copy of it for a long time now, a couple of years, and so there's actually really no excuse with this one, because I at least own it. A lot of the books that are on this list I don't own. I actually do own Finnegans Wake as well. But so Joseph and His Brothers is my second choice. Third book is one that I don't own, and one that has probably been on my TBR almost as long, if not longer, than any of the other books on this list. And this book is The City of God by St. Augustine. And I don't actually quite know all that much about The City of God, other than that it's supposed to be one of the most influential works of theology ever written, and that supposedly it is actually supposed to be quite readable. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard from certain camps. So I've just been wanting to read it because it sounds like it was hugely influential on Catholic theology especially, and I am interested in that sort of thing, and this is just a really big book, and it's a big work of theology, and so that's what's been holding me back, I would say. The next book is one of the first ones that really is one of my kind of basic bitch choices, because it's one of the books that's on every hipster's, bucket list at some point. And the book is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I wanted to read it for several years. I actually wanted to read Infinite Jest even before I was a particularly devoted reader. And it's just big, it has footnotes, there are parts of it that, similar to Finnegans Wake, I think, are written in a sort of dialect. David Foster Wallace also, like Joyce in Finnegans Wake, invented a lot of words while writing Infinite Jest. But it sounds really, really interesting, and some people adore the book, so I would like to read it. Next book is, again, primarily from its length. This is The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, kind of a tale of this prince named Genji. And this book has just been on my TBR for a really long time, and I can't exactly explain what's held me back from reading it, other than just that I don't own it. But I wanted to read it for again, a few years now, and haven't yet. And I feel like I should, because I'm very interested in Japan, even though I haven't read like a ton of Japanese literature. It is a country I would like to learn more about and like to read more of its literature, and this is one of the biggest classics from Japan. And then going a little bit further in time from the Tale of Genji, but still quite distant in time, is Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto, which is a really long epic poem about Orlando, also known as Roland, who's most famous from the anonymous French poem, The Song of Roland. And this is like an epic poem that has been published in 2 volumes in the Penguin Classics line, and so it's just a little bit intimidating for that reason. And because it's medieval literature, and medieval literature, in my experience, is incredibly weird. Like, it's actually surprising just how distant from our own modern cultural consciousness some medieval literature can seem, and I get the sense that Orlando Furioso is very much in that vein. But, you know, Orlando Furioso was hugely referenced in Don Quixote, which I read a couple of years ago, and didn't really like, but it really got me interested in reading this, so I am interested in it. Next one is The Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa, which I do actually own, but I've owned for a couple of years and still have yet to read. And this is, I guess, a novel, but I think Fernando Pessoa himself called it a factless autobiography, whatever that means. And I wanted to read The Book of Disquiet ever since I read a piece about it in The New Yorker, where the author of the piece quoted from The Book of Disquiet at some length, and the quotes just kind of blew my mind. I thought that they were so eloquent and insightful, and so I've wanted to read it ever since then. The next one is probably a bit less well known to a lot of people, is The Changing Light at Sandover by James Merrill, and this is a basically postmodern epic poem that James Merrill wrote based on sessions with a Ouija board that he engaged in with his partner for many years. He wrote this epic poem based on his ostensible communications with the dead through this Ouija board. And it's supposed to be this highly elusive, referential, difficult, postmodern epic poem. And, you know, if you need some reference for how dense it is, I actually own a copy of the first third of the book. It's divided into thirds, like Dante's Divine Comedy, and the first third of it is called the Book of Ephraim, and my copy of the Book of Ephraim is probably something like 200 or 300 pages long, but about half of the book, or maybe a third of the book, is just endnotes explaining stuff to you that's going on. So it's a difficult work, and it's one of those books where there's entirely separate books written just to help you understand this book, like Finnegans Wake. There are books like there are things like that for Finnegans Wake as well, and for another entry in this list. But anyway, yeah, I definitely want to read The Changing Light of Sandover because James Merrill is one of my favorite poets of all time, and this is just, you know, this is a major work of his, and so I would like to read it. And I'm intrigued by the premise of it, you know, the fact that it was written with a Ouija board, I think is really interesting, even though it sounds quite, you know, woo-woo, but it sounds cool. And then, alright, 2 more, and then the next one is a Russian novel, and this is Life and Fate by Vasily Grossman, And I don't actually know that much about this one, but I just know that it's one of these really, really huge philosophical Russian novels that are right up my alley, and a lot of people love this book, as well as Vasily Grossman's other novel, which I think is a prequel to Life and Fate, called Stalingrad. And that one I could also have easily put on this list, but I'm more interested in Life and Fate, mostly because the title appeals to me. Yeah, so there's that one. And then the last book is, again, kind of like Infinite Jest, kind of a basic bitch choice, but very much belongs on this list for me personally, and it's Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon, which, again, is just supposed to be very, very difficult. It's one of those novels where there are entirely separate books written to help you understand Gravity's Rainbow. And, you know, that pushes a lot of people away, but I actually find that sort of thing really cool. I really like that. I really like being able to just sink my teeth into and wrestle with a book, and it sounds like one of those books that you very much have to. And it also sounds like one of those books that kind of makes people uncomfortable as well for the things that are portrayed in it, and that's understandable, but I'm also always interested when I hear about a book like that makes people feel uncomfortable, and it's also just supposed to be one of the greatest works of American literature, so there's that. So, anyway, those are my bucket list books. Thank you for tagging me, Sean, and creating the tag, of course. I will tag anyone who is watching who might want to do this, who may not have encountered the tag or been tagged by Sean in his original video. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and that's all. Let me know if you have any thoughts on the books that I mentioned, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.